Afghanistan in the West is not just a simple issue of soldiers and an Afghan people wanting their own sustainable government. These are people working together for a better future. Inside opposition today is accused of wanting to just continue to be that ongoing presence in Afghanistan, one that holds back their future. But today we have the audacity to ask for a more sustainable future in Afghanistan. I'll be presenting my major arguments in 2 points, focusing on trust and regrowth, but first beginning with a thorough refutation of my opponent's case. Now, you heard them say a lot of things, and you heard them put words in our mouth. In fact, in our first proposition speech, what we heard was that we want to put democracy in Afghanistan. We want to force it on them. But I simply don't remember my partner or myself saying that at any point in this debate, nor do I remember this being a concrete thing that we have discussed. Because we want what's best for Afghanistan. And in fact, the West has huge trading partnerships with Saudi Arabia, with Yemen, and with all the countries that operate on monarchies, dictatorships, and non-democratic rule. We are not just talking democracy today. This is an issue about the Afghan people and what is best for their future. My opponents tried to say that harming international relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan and other countries in their area. But simply, we see this as not a valid fact, because in fact, Afghanistan's neighbor, Pakistan, is good friends with the West. So I don't see how that's going to harm international relationships there. This is not a simple issue that can be broken down in such simplistic terms. Now, you heard them say that we're going to be forcing democracy. That's something that you heard time and time again. But instead, side proposition would force the Afghan people to just make do. We would force them to go through a little trial and error, right? If a few people die here or there, if the Taliban get a little bit more control, it's okay. We'll work it out in the end. It's fine. Sustainable government can come later. But unfortunately, my opponents tried to say that we're short-sighted today. That we're asking for sustainable government, and that's a short-sighted goal. Now, I believe that the word sustainable contradicts this very statement, because in fact, sustainable means that we're talking about something that will last long after we are gone. Yes?
How can you create a sustainable government after the West leaves if the Afghan people did not build it themselves?
How can we create it? There's another underlying assumption, that it's just going to be the West imposing a government on them. But it's a transitioning role today. Intents are changing. The U.S. is changing more towards building Afghan communities.
On that point.
Something that I will be talking about later. Further, my opponents also wanted to bring up examples such as North Korea. They wanted to bring up Canada-U.S. relations. They wanted to compare these to the situation in Afghanistan. But just to build on what my partner said about North Korea, the reason we don't interfere there, we don't even know how old the dictator is. We believe he's either 28, 29, or 30. We're not really sure. But we do know Afghanistan. We've been there for 10 years. Afghanistan has been in a state of war for 30 years. This is not a time to just leave right now. Yes?
Major success has not actually happened. Is your side proposing any new change in action, or simply to follow the same course that you're taking now?
To follow the same course is another interesting statement. Because again, the major success that my opponents deny, they also claim the Taliban is gone. I don't see how we can have made no success and having the Taliban gone at the same time. Because the Taliban being gone would be a major success. If we want to say that no change has been made in Afghanistan, now is the time to make that change. Now is not the time to leave. Now is the time to act. But just leaving is just another one of those simple, stagnant solutions. One that won't last into a sustainable government. One that won't let the people build a government. This is not the time to focus on the same old message. Just leaving now is focusing on that same thing. The Afghans can do it on their own, or we can impose it on them. But what if there was a partnership? What if there was more than just a simple dichotomy? What if the Afghan people and the West could work together? I'll be talking about that in my second point today. But first, to move on to earning trust. Now, you leave Afghanistan right now. What's the image they have of our soldiers? Is it the way we think of it? Are they hardworking men and women putting their lives on their line for the sake of the Afghans, for their country, and for stability in the region? Or is it people who burn holy books? is that people who have killed family members, destroyed villages, and left cities in entire ruin. Isn't that the same message that the Taliban keeps preaching to the young Afghan children? Isn't that the same propaganda that we've heard from their terrorist forces? We would be leaving them under the direct control of the Taliban with that. We would have no chance to build relations again. In fact, what we would have is these people knowing that the Taliban must be right in some way. But we know that's not true. We know that our soldiers are more than just another terrorist force in the region. They're working for a better future. So why don't we give them a chance to prove it? This is no longer about just soldiers anymore. This is a time for them to build relations. Yes?
If you're negatively affecting Afghan lives by creating violence, how is that a positive influence and showing a positive image of soldiers to the Afghan people?
The positive image of soldiers right now is a sign that we need to work on. And if we just leave right now, we don't have the chance to build those relations. And I'd like to bring up a personal example here.
On that point.
No, thank you. A teacher at my school, his name is Major Nanato, has served 2 tours of duty over in Afghanistan with PSYOPs. He went on a campaign to build relations, but was sabotaged both times by the Taliban. On his first tour of duty in 2010, they went to build a dam for the Afghan citizens to help give water to a region plagued by drought. But before they were even half done that dam, it was blown up by the Taliban. There's no chance for them to survive. That dam could have built relationships, but instead, the Afghan people did not get it because the Taliban claimed that the Westerners just left, that they just left the region in despair. They didn't tell the people that they were the ones that blew up that dam and prevented any chance of a better future for the citizens. If we want a better future for them, we need that transitionary role to stay. This is not a simple case anymore. We have to work on this carefully and not just entirely pull it and leave these people without a better way forward. No, thank you. Further, I'd like to talk about regrowth. Because after we've earned their trust, now these people can know that we're there to help them. Because if we don't have their trust, then we can't help them regrow.
On that point.
No, thank you. With the Afghan tradition, what we have is an agrarian lifestyle in the rural areas. We have people who want to build farms. But 30 years of war with the Russians and then with the West have left mines in the fields. Former rivers have dried up with no way for the Afghans to try and rebuild any chance of having a farm. Because instead, their young children, their young boys have been taken at the age of even 12 by the Taliban. They've been taken into these camps where they're told how awful life will be. But instead, if we keep Afghan soldiers and we keep NATO soldiers there, we can eliminate the Taliban and we can help rebuild that agrarian tradition. Afghanistan has incredible mineral resources, be it oil, precious rocks, precious stones, precious metals. They have them in the mine, ones that are not currently under government control. But if we stay there, we can maintain that control, and we can build a better future for Afghanistan. Because if we have their trust, then we can help them regrow together. We don't need to leave them on their own. We can be there with them, so that they can have a homegrown government that's given stability by the West. The West will eventually leave, but the question we must ask is it today? Is now the time to entirely pull out if we've not yet finished what we've started? Thank you.